Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Rebel Show. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. I am. It's Mother's Day weekend. So everybody should be calling or visiting their mothers. Hopefully you guys did something like that. So today, I want to talk about how God's a promoter. And, a lot of times we sit back and we think, oh, well, hopefully God has good things for me. Hopefully God doesn't have bad plans for me. Hopefully there's good things for me. And God does have good things for you in store. In the Bible, there's examples of people believing for one result and ending up getting a better one. When you believe God, sometimes things turn out better than you expect. And there's a few examples we want to go over, And that's because God is a promoter, I believe. I believe God's always looking to give you more than you're believing for. I believe that God's always looking to answer your prayer in a bigger way than you're believing. God's big, and he has big plans for us. And if we align our thinking with the way God thinks about us, we can have these great promises. We have to know what they are. You need to search the scriptures to find out. In Ephesians 3:20, it says, "Now unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think, according to the power that works in us." He gave us power. We have the ability to speak to the mountain. We have the ability to influence our life and our situations that we come into. It's not up to God to do everything, but the power works in us. We believe and speak, enabling God's power to flow. Let's take a look at Moses. In Exodus chapter 2, Moses' mother puts him in a basket and covers it with this tar stuff so it can float, and then just sends it out into the water, into the river. That's pretty crazy nowadays. That'd be insane if you told somebody, I'm afraid the king's after my child, and I'm going to put him in a boat and send him down the river and just hope that somebody finds him and takes care of him, just hope that he can survive. But Moses' mother didn't quite know what was in store for her. She sent her older daughter to follow the little basket. And the older daughter followed it, and it ended up going into the kind of the watery courtyard area of the palace of the Pharaoh. And it just so happened that the Pharaoh's daughter was down there bathing and saw it. And when the baby cried, she had compassion for him. And she basically said, "Hey, let's take this child in. I want to raise him." And so obviously, the daughter, she talks to her and says, "Hey, you know what? I know someone who can tend to the child and help you tend to the child." Well, guess who it ended up being? Moses' mother. So Moses was a good chance of dying. The mother had some faith, believed God that if I can just get him out of here, get him somewhere safe, he'll be taken care of. But not only was he taken care of, it worked out better than Moses' mother could have imagined, exceedingly abundantly better. So this kid that would have grown up a slave or murdered got to live in the house of the Pharaoh, raised by the Pharaoh's daughter. The mother was there to tend to the child as like a nanny type thing. Man, what a deal. The kid got to grow up with the mother. Wow, that's pretty cool. So this is talking about Moses' mother. She believed God, that God would take care of him, and so she acted and just believed. And look how God turned it around. And Moses, ended up leading the people to the promised land, Now we can look at Joseph. In Genesis chapter 37 through 50, it tells his story of Joseph. It's a long story, but it's pretty good. Joseph had some jealous brothers that sold him into slavery, right? So Joseph was basically sold as a slave who went into the house of Potiphar. He was an officer of the Pharaoh. And he ended up being falsely accused and sent to the king's prison, which was a dungeon. And after 2 years, he got an opportunity to interpret the Pharaoh's dream. Because I believe he had interpreted someone else's dream, and then this person got released. And they told the king, "Hey, I know a guy that can interpret dreams." So he went in, he interpreted this dream for Pharaoh, which led to him being promoted to the point where he was second in command of the entire nation. It was Pharaoh and then Joseph. So, that 2 years Joseph was in prison in the king's dungeon was 2 years that Joseph believed God and just trusted that God had good things in store for him and things were going to work out. He had a good attitude, and people noticed in the prison. When Joseph was promoted, he devised a plan to make Egypt very wealthy and provide surrounding nations food in the time of a famine. Based on this dream that he interpreted, he came up with a plan, and he was even able to reunite his family and ultimately bring them to Egypt to live with him in luxury. Now that's pretty cool. First, this guy is sold into slavery because of his brothers, jealousy. Then he becomes a slave for a while. After a while, like in Potiphar's house, he gets falsely accused, thrown into the dungeon where he continues to have a good attitude. So nothing good has happened to him so far in a long time. And so still he has a good attitude. He's believing God, trusting God. And, a lot of times we analyze our situation and say, oh man, God must have left me. I don't have favor with God anymore or something. We get to thinking too much. And it tends to, sometimes we forget there's time involved because God has to influence other people sometimes. So sometimes your result could be hindered a little bit because God's got to communicate a message to someone else. So there's a chain of actions going on. So now we have Joseph, second in command. He led the nation in wealth. He had a stockpile of food during a famine that they could sell and make Egypt a ton of money. And it all happened because he chose to believe God. And again, we have to choose to look past bad situations, look through them and see the end result. And a lot of times God has a solution that's better than what you think how it's going to work. You think it's going to work a certain way. God has a better result. If we're believing God, good results are in store for us. That's so true. In my life, there was a time where I was laid off, and as soon as I was laid off, I called my wife and I'm like, you know what? This is not a time to be sad. This is a time to be excited because I'm being promoted. This is a time where most people would be stressed out. Oh man, I just got laid off. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do? Blah, 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 blah. Well, I said, you know what? I'm excited. I'm being promoted. This is going to turn out better. I'm going to end up in a better situation than I am now. And that happened, which has got me totally thinking on these lines and why I wanted to talk about it. So let's relate it to America a little bit. In America, God is being let back into the picture. God isn't going to force his goodness on you. He's not going to force things on you. You have to believe for it, and you have to be expecting it, You have to let it happen. And it's causing a change of tides in the country, and it's bringing prosperity and healing and success back to America. We're starting to see this thing amp up in such a way that's getting exciting. I mean, looking at taxes, the unemployment rate being so low, over 2 million people are off food stamps and stuff because this blessing of God is opening the doors and it's expanding. This change of tides is coming in and it's expanding things that were constricted so far. There's been successful negotiations around the world that the president's been able to pull off with his administration that for 30 and 40 years they haven't been able to make leeway. And in just days, this guy has got an opportunity to make some good things happen. It hadn't happened yet. But you know what? It's looking that way. You know why? Because when you allow God back in and you believe God, it allows his hand to come in and start to work. And the people that have been believing this whole time, their prayers are being answered. I mean, look how President Trump prays, quotes scripture, and gives credit to God all the time. More than I've seen any other president. I've only seen a few of them, but still enough that he has got advisors. He starts his meetings with prayer. I mean, this guy's allowed God to help him. And, there may be some stuff around him that we don't necessarily approve of, but those days are gone. This is a new guy. This is a guy that's looking to do what's right. He's looking to do what the Christian leadership and God is showing him. And at the end of every speech, he always says, God bless you and God bless the United States of America. Every time he says that, I believe it's just empowering things of God to happen in this nation. We're the people that have been believing for like a revival type thing, or that have been believing for God to come back and let's go back to a constitutional state. That's starting to happen. Those prayers were not forgotten. They've been released, and they are empowering the president to be bold and to go out and do the things he needs to do. It's great to have a president leading like this, but really we need Christian leaders to step up and unite the body of Christ and lead. We can't expect the president to do everything. We need to do it. We need to be looking for someone who could be a leader or stepping up as a leader ourselves and doing this job. Just like Moses and his mother believed and things got better than they had hoped for, we need to believe God to restore the United States to greatness. And we need people to stand up and speak their mind, speak what they believe, not be afraid to be ridiculed, because at some point it may happen. But you know what? Joseph spoke his mind. He did what was right. And in the long run, it got him promoted. It got him to be second in charge. So, we need to always do what is right. And we need to do what God shows us to do and stand up for what we believe. And you know what? That'll empower us to take back the nation and get rid of a lot of the goofiness that's going on. So I encourage everybody, let's do this. What are you believing for?